morning. We'll convene the Facilities Committee meeting. We get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
By Ron, seconded by Ms.
Supervisor Stroud?
John, seconds. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, we're going to open up with Frank, I think, with Buildings and Grounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is a personnel item. We're asking to fill a position that's vacant because of a medical issue with a part-time worker for the summer to help with some of the tasks that we're falling behind on, the grounds, the delivery of boxes, just general work order stuff that I'm pulling people off our crew now to put out on the mowers, and I think it would help us to do a part-time position until that. I don't know if the person will come back. They're out until at least December, so.
I'll make that a motion, we approve that position.
Okay, could I have a second on a motion by Ron? Discussion?
It's very much needed for the amount of mowing and stuff they have to do,
Okay, would this get sent on to personnel?
I guess. I don't.
Will we pass it on to personnel? Okay, any other questions, discussion?
What we'll need to do is transfer funds from regular salaries to part-time salaries, so we can,
You'll take care of that.
that's the resolution. I'll follow up with him on the resolution request to do that.
Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
The second item is we've been going back and forth on the jail kitchen, moving assigned counsel to that area so that they have more room, and that would involve moving the court officers out of that space. And they've really kind of dug in their heels that they don't want to go down in the basement. It's a safety issue. It's too far away from where they're operating. So I think a solution to that would be to move assigned counsel down to where probation occupies now. It's opposite the jail kitchen on the other side of the hallway. I think with very little work we can make a secure entryway there where their clientele can come in. It would be a matter of probably 3 walls, and then they'll be behind a closed window as they are now, but the clientele will be out of the hallway. Guards can stay in the jail kitchen until we move them into the new space in the court addition. And at that time, we might want to look at turning that jail kitchen into a file storage room for probation. Their biggest problem is they have so many file cabinets that they have no office space. So that would make a good room for that. In the meantime, probation can use the space that we vacate that assigned counsel is in now. They use the room they're in now mainly for groups. So it would be a matter of 10 chairs in a circle in that space, and I think it would be adequate for that.
And that's okay with them?
Yes, I spoke to all of them.
Okay, any questions? Rachel?
I'm just wondering, two quick questions. One, have we expended dollars to convert that new space over for Joy? I thought Ron was working closely to make sure that that was happening. And 2, what's the master plan in terms, we talked about raise the age and, possible, talking a little bit about, is it possible to convert that old jail? I mean, what's the...
The only dollars we've expended are the asbestos abatement in that area, and we have to do that regardless of what we're going to do with it.
Okay.
The space for assigned counsel will be about the same in the kitchen and in the space that I'm going to move them to now, and it's actually just across the hall. So, and then the master plan is, like I say, originally that area was all part of a corridor that led to probation. That mail room and all that was added at a later date, so that could be taken back out. And if we need to expand probation into that area, their biggest problem in probation is file storage. They're just jammed with file cabinets, so it would make a good space, and we wouldn't have to do as much renovation to make a file room.
And what is Joy, is she okay with?
She's fine with that. It's, her main concern is to have a secure area where the clientele come in, and we can do that very easily in that space. It's a large space. It's the old sheriff administration area. So,
It's a much bigger space than Joy has now, and it won't take us much to put that petition up, so we can get that done.
Yeah.
And she'll still be secure?
yes.
Do you need a motion on this to approval?
I don't think so. I think it's just consensus, but
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it to the committee so we're all headed in the right direction.
Everybody knows about
I
it.
know we've gone back and forth on the kitchen area.
Yep. Okay. Ron?
In that part of the building too, you know, Frank and his crew have established a space for, if we have this nighttime arraignment program, we're ready for that with a judge's, well, it's not a judge's chambers, but it's at least judge's bench, and there's a restroom facility there, so we can move quickly if we're gonna do that, but,
Okay.
the only other question that we have, and the chairman and the administrator have the numbers, that there's nothing we're gonna do in the jail until we get the abatement issue. And that's, the last bid we had was about $80,000, and I think we're looking at that seriously. If we wanna do anything with it, including taking it down, you
Yeah.
still gotta do the abatement. So I think that's probably one of the next steps that this committee should be addressing.
Okay, we haven't authorized an abatement yet?
No, we haven't.
Jeff?
Just to update the committee regarding the abatement, if you're going to proceed with the abatement, we really need a plan on what happens after that, because some of the abatement area would remove the windows. So it's been a kind of a pending project for years now. I think the most viable end state of that jail is a demolition. But if we abate it, we're going to end up with windows removed and need to proceed immediately with something, unless we're going to just plastic over them, which I don't think is a
Well,
solution.
the other question that's been beating around is that, what do we do with youthful offenders? Is there a possibility that that building could be converted into a regional, you know, there's only four youthful offender position or buildings in the state, and if we're forced into this, which I guess we are, right? The law says that we're gonna have to do this, right? You know, should we maybe consider that? I don't know what it's supposed to look like. That's one of the questions that is it supposed to look like a jail, or is it supposed to look like a home or a dormitory? And if we could get that information, then that might help in our decisions too. Of course, then it's a matter of, does Washington, Essex, Clinton, Hamilton, Franklin, Saratoga want to be part of this regional facility? Sheriff has started that process, and I think at the last meeting, Rachel asked the sheriff for some numbers, and
Got 'em to us.
we got some of that. So, but I mean, that's another thought process that goes along with what you're talking about, abatement.
Would it, about the abatement, maybe we should have discussions by the administrator, the budget officer, and the chairman as to,
See, I thought the cost was a lot more than that, but maybe I'm wrong.
well, probably the execution of it, but probably telling us what we got to do to abate it, or was it?
Yeah, there was asbestos in lead areas, and as I recall, it was about $80,000 in abatement cost.
That's an old estimate.
And that's dated. We'd want to update that. I'm sure it's increased even with just prevailing wage rates.
I do think we need to do that abatement, irregardless.
We could put it on the agenda for next month if you guys talk about it. There's a glitch and we need more information to move forward. You know, we could hold
Want to
up.
make sure the investigation, we're satisfied the investigation is complete. Complete investigation.
Well, I think
We would have to know whether
the old report
whether
was
the bid
pretty
report are
expensive.
current, or whether we have to step back out again. And the question, particularly Jeff, is the issue with the windows that caulk, lead in the caulk,
Right.
or asbestos.
Asbestos, right.
That'd be an interesting discussion to have with the consultant as well, in terms of the best time for that to take place. Might have a little more flexibility on that item. as opposed to the asbestos. But that would be the kind of conversation you would want to have
Okay.
with the consultant.
Why don't we do a little bit of review and,
Yeah.
and relive, and then see if we can bring it back on next month's agenda if it's worthwhile. Okay? Thanks, Frank.
So, so these moves, mostly it's just temporary. Things are going to change once the new court is in, and there's...
Yeah, the finished product, Frank, was a good question by Craig. With what you offered today to do, when we get the finished product, what ends up with the longevity of what you did?
The only change would be that the jail kitchen would be vacated by the guards. Right now, they're in there, and our plan was to go in there and do some renovations anyway if we were going to move the sign council down there. So if it becomes a file room, I don't think we need to do anywhere near as much renovations. But whatever renovations we do with these moves, they won't change after the guards move out.
Or with the court, when the court is in,
Right.
they stay.
This is completely independent of anyone moving because of the court project. These are all offices that are outside the footprint of the court project.
Okay? And then,
I'll call you back.
you're on the cooperative extension roof pricing?
Yeah, on page 3 and 4 of your packet, page 3 is an estimate if county crews replace the roof, the total will be $6,200. That does not include labor. That's materials and then on the back of that, I apologize, this isn't broken down more. I got a quote from Tim Monahan over the weekend and quoted me the wrong building, so I was on the phone with him this morning. This is a ballpark figure, but it's pretty accurate. It goes by the square footage of the building.
Okay, how many square? And that's if we let it out?
If we contracted it to Monahan, DP Monahan is on contract right now with the county, so
Okay.
to him for the pricing.
And your crews will have time or to get it in before the winter season?
Before winter, yeah, I would think early fall would probably be the best. It's a little bit cooler, so we're not wrecking shingles if we walk on it.
Okay, and do you, the 6,200, will that have to be allocated?
Sorry.
Will that have to be allocated out of a contingent or something? Is that anything you have, or
I don't have
not
it.
that amount?
No.
Yes, Doug, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Speak back here in the front. But
Go ahead, Mike.
after the discussion last month, I had my staff look around, and we found a capital reserve account that has been dormant for several years that was set aside for repairs. It's got $6,400 into it. So I was going to suggest to the committee that we take that money and put it towards the roof up there.
Okay. Doug?
Yeah, I was just wondering, did we put an RFP out for this, or I know it's 20,000 we're supposed to, or up we have to, but was there an RFP we put out for this, or?
I haven't done anything yet. This was just an estimate for budgeting that Monahan did for
Will
me.
you plan on putting an RFP out for it?
If it's 20,000 or over, I think we'll
You
have
have
to.
to.
But I think we were going to do the roof in-house,
We're gonna do it in-house.
House.
and that was a comparative, was if we did it with the contract vendee that we have on for this year, checking with them to see what it would be to have an outside source do it. So it's 6,200 materials, no labor, as opposed to 20,000 if we paid an outside contractor.
So we're gonna do it in-house.
Yeah, and the 6,200, Mike says he's found it in a capital reserve if we want to do that.
I'll make the motion, whatever.
Okay, to move the capital account Mike's talking.
The exact amount I have here and the code numbers, but we can get that. But it's right between 62 and 6,400, so Mike's suggestion we could take it all and put it towards the roof, and whatever's left, we can take out a contingent.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Ron. Any more discussion? Okay, hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
The next item is Horicon Avenue Extension Sewer Project. I believe planning is here to discuss that, planning department.
I've been elected. to talk about it.
Is,
Is there a start on that, Kevin, or do we really?
Yeah, no, I'll bring them up to speed. This is the long saga of the counties sought out grant money 2 years ago to help run a sewer line from Countryside Adult Home down to the Warrensburg sewer on Horkin Avenue. And there have been hurdles and high hurdles and more hurdles to jump, and we finally got through all the hurdles. It's a $400,000 grant, and then there would be around $300,000 in in-kind services, so it equals about $700,000 total for to run the sewer line down. The town of Warrensburg is going to provide people to lay the sewer line down from Horkin Avenue down to our connection on Main Street, which is about a mile and a half worth of pipe. It's going to be a force main. We have the expertise to do that, so we're putting our crews on that. The county's been asked to take care of, because it is a county grant, the county's been asked to hook in to do all the work on the county properties, which is Countryside, and then also leave a stub for Cornell Cooperative Extension, which has sewer issues in the wintertime. The project is twofold. We have a well field up there. This will get Countryside off of a septic system, which potentially could affect our well field in the future. It hasn't now. And then it's a good project. And as a caveat, the only person who's spent any money on the project is the town of Warrensburg. We have spent around $60-some thousand on all the engineering and all the archaeological study that we had to do up there, which held the project up for another 3 months. So the town of Warrensburg is out $63,000 on this project, and we're just looking to bring everybody up to speed and say that the state has finally okayed everything, okayed the specifications for the pipes, I guess, and the bids are going into the papers, just to bring everybody up to speed so they don't get sticker shock on the cost of it. But I tried to get this done in 2006 when I was brand new here, before they put a septic system in there, but it didn't work. So thanks to Patricia, she went out and sought this grant, and we got almost half of it in grant money. So it's a good deal for the county, and I think it's a good deal for the town of Warrensburg.
Pat, do you want to explain some of what you've been through with the grant process?
Sure.
Some are new on the committee, so it would be helpful.
All right. For those of you who are new to me and new to the work of the department in this regard, the planning department has been the main scribe in preparing applications, particularly under the Community Development Block Grant Program. Under Wayne's leadership, the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program. We put this application in 2014 to the New York State Office of Community Renewal. It went through the regular process of submission. The Board of Supervisors passed the resolution for the submission. We were funded for this in a large part due to, I think, the clientele that is at the facility, as well as the fact that the county has been in the business of providing this gap housing actually since the late 1800s with successive buildings. And the last iteration of the, I call it a legacy project, is the current facility on Schroon River Road. So this particular project needed a connection to the town of Warrensburg sewer system. I looked at my grant notes this morning, and I reminded myself that we had that the facility spends about this is in 2014 numbers, so I can only imagine it's gone up. They were spending $25,000 a year for to clean out the septic system. And in addition to that, they were paying for off-site services for laundry. So, and I think that was in the neighborhood of about $16,000. So, the hope was that, notwithstanding the need to protect the water supply and that aquifer that's underneath that whole county piece of property right there,
is the fact that we have an opportunity to cut down the costs related to, you know, having that facility available for residents in the county. And we do have a number of veterans that is their only option for housing. So that was actually one of one of the things that opened the door for us, and that's where funding with the state. So, you know, as Kevin said, they have put a lot of effort forward, stepped up in terms of paying for engineering fees. You know, we got kind of blindsided with the regulatory side related to the Indians. You have to do a tribal consultation, and we thought we only had to do the Mohawks and Mohegans, but lo and behold, they said, no, you have to do you need to talk to the Delawares. And the Delawares, I don't know, maybe because they moved them to Oklahoma, I'm not sure, but they were a long time in coming around and you know, really forced the issue about the archaeological study, which the town of Warrensburg graciously, you know, spent the money on, and Curtin Archaeological from Balsam Spa did the archaeological study. So we have a commitment to the state as it relates to any, as we move forward with construction of that particular piece of that installation of the line, should we find anything that relates to funerary or other things that may be suspicious related to the Indians, that we will contact the tribal historic preservation officers and apprise them of whatever, and they would send somebody down. We're confident, though, based on the number of times you know, excavating blade has crossed down Scream River Road, that we're not going to probably find too much. But as Kevin said, the regulatory side of the project was protracted, you know, because of what we had to do to meet that tribal consultation. So on Saturday's Post-Star, the bids were left, and we expect that the bid opening would occur on July the 11th. So we're hoping to have a pre-construction conference like the day after that, and whenever we can go forward beyond that to get this project completed, you know, by early fall. You know, that's our plan. So that's pretty much where we are on the project.
What is the total grant that you received to date?
We received $400,000, and we had 50 of that is for admin, some engineering. But we've had this. Our contract was actually started the 14th. Our award was the 14th of December, or the 8th of December of 2014, and we had to ask for an extension in order to, you know, certainly work within the construction season and then meet the regulatory issues related to the tribal consultation issues. So, you know, we've got we're good until December of this year, and we can't expense any dollars, I think, after January 7th or 8th, something like that. But I think we'll be long done with the project before then.
Okay.
And certainly, you know, our concern was also this, is that should the board want to advance another application for other improvements that are needed on the building, we wanted the agency to know that we're doing a good faith effort to complete the project as we had said. So I think we're in good stead with that agency at this point in time. So if the board desires to talk about that at another point in time, that's certainly a possibility. And I believe there's a resolution from the planning committee to advance resolutions for submission. So we're looking at that as well.
Thanks very much, Pat. Any questions for Pat? Ron?
Actually, a question for Kevin. You're going to run down to Main Street, so will the residents in the school, I know it's a force main, will they get an opportunity to look in?
Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, so we're just putting a force main in. There's a couple that have been in touch with us since the beginning, but anybody else who wants to hook on will require more construction at a later date, which will be on the town.
So the schools would...
Not at this time. And the only other thing I would add is the engineering's estimate for this project was like $1.2 million, and we're going to get it done for around $700,000. So because we're doing a lot of work, and we've done a lot of work, and I could really use some funding back to the town.
Kevin, what are we looking for here? Do you need a,
I think it's just an update.
just an update?
I
Okay.
believe, is that right, Chairman? Just an update to the committees?
I think we've got to advance a
Yeah, I think
resolution
there should.
Oh, okay.
finance.
For the, is it-
Oh,
there's-
for the
There's
300,000.
a $300,000 that the
Yeah.
county should be,
Yeah.
okay.
Would I go to budget first, or?
Well, we can move it on to them. Jeff, you had something to add?
I did talk to Wayne Lamothe about putting the local match into the existing capital project that planning established back when they got the grant in 2014. But he said that it would, he had limitations on mixing local monies with the federal grant. So the last meeting we had, I think it was determined that we'd have to establish a capital project. And then with that, the $300,000 of county money would go into that project. And then from that project, we would administer reimbursements to the town forces and county forces on the project, as well as the town sewer department had asked that we lease an excavator for their use, and then also reimburse the town for the engineering costs to date. So that total, with the estimate that Cedarwood had developed for the original construction labor and equipment to install the material, which was about $200,000. They estimated the total to be $300,000 that would have to be put in this new capital project.
So we're looking to establish a $300,000 capital project. You want to make that motion, Matt?
I will.
We need a second to get on the floor. Craig? Any more discussions or questions? And this would be sent on to finance? Okay. Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I have to abstain. I think I should abstain from it,
So
directly about it. Thank you.
And Frank, you got an update on, are we going to have Ron, or is this Ron, both of you, update on the board?
The only update I have is we're doing very well over there. They poured the floor Friday. It was an all-day concrete pour. The roof is pretty much on. Contractors are going to be allowed to go in starting today with ladders only for about a week, and then they can put lifts on it or whatever. So we'll be having a coordination meeting this week with all the contractors, and then they'll all be inside the building doing their preliminary stuff. So I think you'll see a lot of activity over there in the next couple of weeks. But
How many trucks did it take for the pour? I mean, I saw them lined up.
it was all day long. I don't know.
Wow, that's a lot of
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah.
Rachel, just a second. Rachel?
Thank you. What's the estimated date of completion?
I think originally we talked about occupying mid-2018. I believe I'm right there.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of renovation in the existing court space after we move family court into the new space. So I think the total project was a 5-year project.
Ron?
Kevin asked a question, and we don't have an answer. When will the ring road be open? If it will be open, and we're just not sure.
Just not sure.
Well, as long as it's going to get reopened, I've been asked by a couple of the deputies.
It's definitely eventually going to be
Okay, that's
reopened.
fine. Somebody had heard that it wasn't going to be, but,
It'll be open.
okay.
And as far as the timetable, we're ahead of schedule, you would say?
I'd say we're
We're on, at least, we're on
Still
schedule.
budget.
Yeah,
That's Ron's question. I was looking for schedule.
I think we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule.
Okay. Yeah, because we had a good winter. I know we're a little bit ahead of with things. That's great. I didn't know if the rain had slowed it down, that we had all in May there. Okay. All right. Anything else for Frank? Anybody have any other questions for Frank, Buildings and Grounds? Anyone from the public have questions for Frank, Buildings and Grounds questions?
I'm just looking out the window.
Could you just step to the mic, please?
So, I don't know, I'm just looking out the window here and I see the jail, and I see this truck that has no home. And I'm just wondering why you can't pop a hole in that thing and shove the truck in there and turn it into a garage. I mean, I don't know.
I think there's a lot of people share your sentiment. Anyone else? I think we're all set, Frank.
Have we talked, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go
Just
ahead.
to follow up on that, I thought we've had some discussions about using that area as a storage space for vehicles. I mean, was that looked at, we ruled it out, or what happened?
The jail space? Go ahead.
The bottom line is, once we do a change of use, you have to meet current code. So if the building was designed as a jail, if we use it as a jail, then it's not a change of use. Virtually any other use of it, we have to meet current codes, and that's really where the problem lies.
And would those problems still lie then if we looked at that as a joint effort with other counties to rehab that into a juvenile detention facility?
I think it would depend on what that facility would have to look like. If there was very little change to the steel bar cages upstairs, then probably there wouldn't necessarily be a change of use. But I think the devil's in the details, as Supervisor Montesi said. You know, depending on what the requirements are, it may require new code compliance.
But to use that for a storage facility for vehicles, we would not then meet the standards of the new code?
Right. Then you'd be looking at code for garage facility. So I don't know if the building would accommodate anything like that anyway, but I just know that it opens up a whole new standard of current
Would that
codes.
be a higher standard than what we use for defense?
Oh, we're talking about 2017 code versus 1960 code. So virtually all the standards have changed.
Well,
And some of it is that we took a tour once. One of the issues was it was only 8-foot ceilings in it. I know at least a second floor. So it was more with how you were going to outfit it and the cost of it and the commitment to it. So it had like limited possibilities in that regard. So there was a lot of throwing up our hands and say maybe we just should tear it down. The land is probably more valuable and to build something properly. But that was over years. If the impetus is to really do something now, I don't think anybody would be against discussions of looking to either tear it down or modify it or get some use out of it. But what we did is, with the court expansion of 16 million, we were going to include tearing that down, but we opted out because it would up it even more. So that's kind of where it's ended, and it's laid dormant. If the committee would like to pursue some avenue of either getting rid of it or renovating or making some use, because I think Travis kind of sums it up. It just sits there and it's certainly not getting, healthier. Ron?
the sheriff is going to visit one of these detention centers and and talk to corrections, state corrections, to see what kind of what this building should look like. I mean, is it going to require us to take all of the the steel down and make a dormitory room, or is it still going to be, in a way, a prison facility? So we're working on that, and the sheriff is involved in it, so we'll have some better answers for the committee. But at this point, you're right. It's 8-foot ceilings, and you want to make it a garage, you'd have to take that cement floor out between the first and the second and take all the steel.
Frank, you had something to add?
Well, I was just going to add that part of the reason for the new jail was that these cells no longer met code for incarceration. In order to make them any bigger, we looked at renovating it for office space, and we can't put heat pumps up over the ceiling because they're too low. The only heat or air well, there's no air in the building, but the heat is 2 heatilators on the far wall. So I think you're still looking at some pretty significant demolition and abatement before you can do anything in there.
Can I ask one quick question? I don't want to delay this thing. If you do the $80,000 abatement, will that make that building ready to be demolished?
I believe so.
And then you could let a contract to let whoever took it down have the materials out of the building, and they could almost do it for zero. I mean, it's worth a shot. If we abate it and then it's ready for other use, right? 'Cause there's a lot of...
I would just caution that that 80,000 is at least 6 or 7 years old, so...
Yeah, so it's 85 now. I mean, the sad thing is, in 2004, when they built the jail, they didn't think about doing anything there, so you're left with it, and it's 12 years now. We've been talking at least for 10 years about what we're going to do with that, and it just sits there, So maybe it's time to...
Rich?
Just a question, I'm just listening, is there a possibility that it could be leased to a developer under an RFP, put out a bid, and then the developer, he's responsible for renovating it, and then he would maybe lease it back to certain programs or whatever? I'm just curious, just a thought.
I think as we go through our thought process, that'd be something that
It is.
we'll throw in the mix and...
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Rachel?
Add that on the pending list of things to look at next month then.
Okay.
I mean, I just would hate for it to kind of get buried again, and if we could keep it on the top of our radar screen.
We have to bring back the report, though, right? Frank, we need to update that report and get that back to committee for next month.
Is that something you would be the first deal would be to update that $80,000 abatement report?
Costs associated with that, I'm assuming.
I think we should, so just so we know.
How does the committee feel about updating that abatement report and the costs associated with it?
Yeah, I'd make a
good with that.
motion, go ahead with that, at least do that. Let's
I'll
find
second
a
that.
company to read it over.
Okay, and that you would secure pricing, is that what you would do? I don't want to
Well,
put more...
the original proposal was Clark Patterson, and I believe they're on contract with the county, so...
Well, they ought to do it for nothing, right? Seriously, just take the report and say, what's changed? If there's not a lot changed, they could say, you can use this report.
I imagine there's...
Pretty sure they won't do it for...
Well, we'll see.
Well, why don't we authorize Clark Patterson to update the abatement report on the old jail? Is someone want to have that in the motion
I'll
form?
make it.
Ron, seconded by Matt. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
This was one of the concepts that the chairman talked about on one and done thing. Let's get it done so that we can move on, one way or the other.
Okay. All right, I think that'll do it. I'd like to move on to the airport. We're at 10 after. Thanks, Frank.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on the agenda, I have an action item, a miscellaneous resolution request. Authorize the chairman to sign an updated airport DBE program. The program's been modified due to new regulations for data collection, and it also includes updated participation goals.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor by John. Second. We need a second for John's motion. There's a motion on the floor and we need a second.
Second.
Okay, Ron Montesi seconds. Discussion.
What
Claudia?
is the motion? I can't hear you, I'm sorry, what was the motion?
The motion...
Authorize the chairman to sign an updated DBE program for the airport for our federally assisted projects.
Thank you.
Okay, questions, discussion?
That
Rachel?
DBE was pretty big.
Yeah, it's a very large document, yeah. That's correct.
Rachel?
I didn't get it all read,
Yeah, it's a lot to read. The meat of the program, there is about 40 pages in the middle, and it includes new calculations for our participation goals. And then there's some additional data collection requirements on our federal projects. That will all get incorporated into our contracts and our bids that we put out for our federal projects.
Okay, hold on, Rachel has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ross, this looks to be a significant document, and I don't know about anybody else, if they've all read every word of it, but I haven't. Is this something that has to be passed today? I mean, is it time sensitive?
It's a 3-year update. This plan hasn't changed dramatically as far as the time sensitive. We're supposed to put out a legal ad. We had our consultation, and we're supposed to put out a legal ad about these updates to our program, but honestly, I don't know if there's a time urgency to it.
You want to make a motion to table?
Well, I just like a little more time. I mean, unless everyone else has done all their homework and read all of it, and they all want to...
It's pretty standard.
It's pretty standard, yeah.
Well, it may be standard, but I don't like voting on things I haven't had a chance to read.
You want to make a motion to table?
Yeah, if that's what the committee would agree to, then yes, I'd be
We
happy.
have a motion to table, we have a second. Second by Matt. Okay, there's no discussion. All those in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, motion passed. We'll table it till next month.
Thank you.
Did you send out that report?
Yeah,
It's online.
it's with the agendas.
Just came out.
Standard stuff.
Posted it for download because it's a huge document.
Or
Or
I'm not gonna print it
No, it is.
August 1st.
We can get you a hard copy if you want.
sometime.
Okay, Ross, second.
Next item on the agenda, it's a miscellaneous resolution request. It's to authorize the treasurer to make a payment to the Balloon Festival for the balance of donations and parking fees received during the Adirondack Balloon Festival. For the first time, we actually collected more donations and parking fees than we needed to cover, per the contract, our DPW overtime and food expense. With the final amount to be determined by the treasurer's office, we have a balance here due to the Balloon Festival organizers per the agreement, and it is approximately $2,843.
Okay, motion to get it on the floor by Ron, seconded by Matt. Discussion. Any questions? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Okay, that's all the action items I have for the committee. I did email out through Amanda a copy of the updated spreadsheets that was discussed in the prior committee meeting. That would be the number one referral item. I don't know if anyone had any questions or wanted to discuss that. I didn't include it in the committee packet, but I did distribute those spreadsheets as requested.
Did anybody review them and have questions on that? Rachel?
I did, but if you could just give me a moment. Can we come back to that in a second? I just want to pull up my notes.
Okay. Want to move to the next item and we'll revisit that?
Sure. There was the referral for the parking plan. We had a meeting with Mr. Abbott, and we offered to participate with some of the work that might be necessary to modify that parking design a little bit, something a little more standard rather than that circle layout that they had originally proposed. We're waiting for Steve to review those suggestions and get back to us. That's all I have on that one.
Any questions on that from the committee? Rachel?
At the advisory committee the other day, we discussed the parking signs, and that was to be separate and apart from this proposal. I know you made a request into the sign shop to have those done. Do you have an update on where that is?
I know that they're working on the design. I do not know what the status is this morning. I didn't speak to them this morning. I know as of Friday they were still working on coordinating that design with engineering.
Okay, and I know I sent you an email back to confirm it was short-term, long-term restaurant. That's all, we're all on the same page with that?
Yeah, what was presented in committee, that parking plan layout that we brought to committee, same information was sent to the sign shop.
Did they, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just want to know if they did give you a timetable on when they would have them ready, just the signs?
They're working on taking the notes from committee and what Ross's suggestions were, and then creating actual designs, to scale of the final signage. So I'll be able to distribute those as soon as they're done, but they're also we're in highway construction season right now, so it is a little bit tighter timeline with their support of the ongoing construction. So as soon as we have those, I'll distribute them to committee and make sure
But I would think-
it's the intent of everyone. And then we did meet, as Ross mentioned, regarding the revised parking plan, and frankly, that will likely change the signage. So that was part of the, I guess the delay was right after we had reviewed possible new signage. Rich Air had come with a proposal to modify the parking again, so we were concentrating on that rather than concentrating on the signs for something that was in flux. So part of that delay is my fault, because I told the sign shop to hold until we until we organize and decide on what the final disposition of that center parking area is going to be.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, we waited several months for signs. It was pulled off the table. I mean, we're talking about 3 signs here, and we're going to re-engineer 3 signs. We're going to wait and do this. It's computerized machines. They can type in that machine and tell the sign what they want put on the blank and get the thing posted. Can't we really, Jeff, in all honesty, try to make a priority out of this and give one guy 4 hours to do 3 signs for the airport and get them posted? In all honesty, I mean, seriously, I mean, can't we really try to cooperate and just try to get these signs up? I mean, we can always move the signs. I mean, you know, they're steel posts. You put them in the ground, you fix them with bolts, and then if they don't work out, or you can move them around. But why can't I don't understand it. You know, I'm a little frustrated. It takes so long to get 3 signs posted at the airport. I mean, in all honesty, why can't we make it just a little bit of a priority and finish it by the end of the week?
You have any comment? You don't have to comment if you don't.
I can tell them to get it done at the end of the week, by the end of the week.
Thank you.
But there was no intentional delay or anything, other than the fact that the minute we reviewed the signage and the parking plan was in flux to be modified, so. But we can go based on status quo of what the existing...
You can always pull the signs up and move them if it requires, but please, can we try to get the signs up by the end of the
Rich?
Just as I mentioned before, I offered to pay for the signs. It's only 3 simple signs: long-term, short-term, restaurant. That's all. So I offered to pay for them, and West Signs couldn't get them done if their department's too busy to do them. So I just want to say that I did throw that out. I'm happy to pay for them.
Thank you. Any other? Rachel?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to highlight the fact that this discussion took place several months ago. There was a vote by this committee to move forward with those parking signs. There was never a vote to stop them. That was done, we spoke with Ross about it, and as Jeff just alluded to, you know, decision was not made by committee to not make those signs. I think at the time, our county said, no, our property, our responsibility, we'll do the signage. But when it takes 4 or 5 months to get 3 signs done, maybe we're at the point where we take them up on his offer. Because...
Well, I think that's where the problem started. Rich produced signs, hung the signs, didn't get committee approval, and then we were in this bushel basket. So we got authorization to do these 3 signs, but then Rich submitted another proposal which could be better for the airport, and I think that kind of stopped things to see if we had a better proposal and to review it, etc.
I just don't understand why that would stop 3 signs, because that process is going to take at least a year, right? We're not going to change the parking plan this summer.
Is having the 3 signs done by the end of the week?
If in fact that will happen, because last week I was told the request went in, and you know, we're still waiting. And it wasn't the busy season 4 months ago or 5 months ago when we approved this. We were trying to be proactive for the busy season.
Okay.
So is that commitment there? Are we good?
That's what he said.
That's what I heard.
Okay, thanks.
Matt, you're shaking your head.
Oh, I'm just...
You didn't hear that, or you're clear with it?
I got it.
That's what I heard, okay.
Just the whole
Both
issue.
shaking your head. I think Rich is shaking his head, too. A lot of shaking their head today.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the number 3 referral item is the proposal from Rich Air for additional T-hangers. To be clear, I think that is on hold pending the county's grant application to build those T-hangers. If I misunderstood, you know, please someone correct me, but I believe that's the situation. I did speak with DOT Aviation Bureau last week. They are in the middle of their review and ranking of our T-hanger grant application. They expect to be done with their review and rankings in the next 3 weeks, at which point it'll get sent off to the Commissioner of DOT, his office, and then on to the Governor for award announcements.
Okay, questions? Matt?
More or less just a comment, Ross. That was, I'm not trying to be condescending, but that was a thorough update on where the application is. I know the last couple times we met, we didn't really have that, and so this time you actually gave an update on where it stands in the application process, rather than just generalizing it, and I personally appreciate that.
Thank you.
Craig?
The announcement by the governor is expected when?
Nobody at the Aviation Bureau can answer that question for me.
Any other questions? Okay, Ross?
The last referral item is for the committee to review questions posed at the April 5th public hearing for the Runway 119 extension project, and any answers that are available. Our consultant did finally complete the response to comments and revisions to the report document based on those comments received. Those have been distributed, and the FAA is currently reviewing those response to comments. Once the FAA has completed their review, and it does involve FAA legal review, so I anticipate it'll take a little bit of time. I know it's a high priority in their office as well to get that completed. I don't have a time frame other than to say they expect to have a determination, hopefully, right now is sometime by the end of July. That's the update that I have on that. I did attach and print out those response to comments. Again, these are being reviewed. They may change slightly based on discussions with the FAA, but the committee asked for them to be sent out as soon as we received them from our consultant, so they are in your packet.
So by next monthly facilities meeting, it could be that they haven't given answers to the review process.
It could be the next step in the process would be for the FAA to either issue a determination on the environmental assessment or require additional work. So we are waiting for the FAA to do their due diligence in reviewing this last step of the environmental assessment project.
In your view, I know you don't have control over these things, but if not July, August, you would feel that we'd have something for the committee?
Yeah, I expect them to have something to us one way or the other by the end of July. That is the drop dead date for grant applications with the FAA is the end of July, and this determination is necessary for the next phase of the project to advance, the design phase.
Okay. Ron?
Dan, just a step back for a minute, the T-hanger issue. If we build them, or we get the grant and we build them, then the revenue that's generated from that goes to us. If Rich Air does them, doesn't cost us anything, we don't have any matching for the grant, and they get the revenue. Is that pretty much what I'm hearing?
In a nutshell.
What are we talking about in terms of revenue?
The estimated revenue is anywhere from $70,000 to $80,000 if the county manages the hangars themselves.
70 to 80,000
a year.
Per year.
Per year, yep. And that would be 20 bays, 2 rows of 10 bays each.
Doug, you had a question?
Yeah, just a comment. I'd like to make a comment on the April 5th public meeting for the runway extension, which I attended. There was approximately 150 to 175 people there. Dan, you were there. And approximately 29 people got up and spoke. There was 2 doctors, 2 environmental lawyers, engineers, businessmen, businesswomen. And of the 29 people that spoke, 6 spoke in favor of the extension, which were all pilots. And 23 people spoke out against it, including 2 pilots. And like I said, doctors, 2 environmental lawyers, and so forth. So, we kind of keep going through this song and dance and so forth, but when you get a cross-section of so many people against that extension, and we at the county continually go down this road of, hey, we know what's best for everybody. We as supervisors, we know what's best for you. And when the people keep speaking overwhelmingly against the extension, I just have to question what our thought process is. And we keep going blindly forward. Many supervisors do, thinking that they know what's best. And I strongly disagree. And I think the people strongly disagree. And I think that cannot be underestimated. And so, I just am totally against our continuing efforts to disregard the public, to disregard the sentiment of the people that put us in office. And finally, I asked Mr. Skimmelhorn blankly in a committee meeting about 2 months ago, if this extension didn't go forward, would that be a deal breaker for you? Because he's obviously relate to lease the airport, and he said no. He'd like it, but he said no, that's not a deal breaker. So for those who keep screaming that it's all about economics and so forth, I consider Mr. Skimmelhorn probably one of the sharper business people in this county, along with Mr. Morris, who strongly has opposed it. And so I just get frustrated at our continual walking down this path when the people have clearly said they don't want it, and when and we as supervisors, some of us, clearly say we know what's best. I have a problem with that, and I just want to make a comment that that meeting, in my mind, was clearly stated, overwhelmingly attended. You can't get 150 people to show up at a meeting if you hand them out $100 bills. You can't get 150 people to show up. But they did that night. And that to me overwhelmingly confirms the people that are against this extension. And anyone else who says differently is just living in a land that I'd like to visit sometime. Thank you.
Claudia?
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for Russ on the table in the updated, actually it's in the response to comments, and I think it's also in the updated report, or EA. In table 1 it has a footnote that says this footnote denotes base aircraft. All the other aircraft, those are ones that we do not have at our airport, but they use our airport, is that correct?
That's what the footnote would indicate. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where you are, but yeah, if it says if it's a based aircraft, then yes, they're a tenant on the airport more than 50% of the year. That's what a based aircraft is defined as. The other aircraft would be defined as transient aircraft, aircraft that are coming and going, visiting the area, conducting for whatever reason. Their aircraft isn't based at the airport 50% of the year.
Do we know how many Falcon 900s we have based?
1.
And what about the Falcon 2000s? How many use that on a transitional or whatever?
Transients? I'd have to scour through the data to try to find that number for you, but there is FlightAware data that would show how many Falcon 2000s operated at the airport in that time period.
One more. Do we have access to that FlightAware data, or is that something?
It's an appendix to the EA, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Doug?
Are you aware of any flights that have ever gone to Europe from Warren County Airport?
Yes, I saw an email from Mr. Westcott that described the aircraft that flew to Germany.
So,
I believe that's what you're referring to.
So we have had an aircraft go to Europe 4,000 miles out of Warren County Airport. Okay. All right. I was just wondering if you were aware of that. Okay.
Hey, Rachel, are you ready to go back to number 1? You wanted to hold on that?
I know we're on a time schedule today, and I'm just wondering maybe next month would be more appropriate if Ross could go over that chart.
Okay.
I've got some questions about some of the tabs and some of the data in it, and I think it would be responsible to ask if perhaps we could look at that next month.
Next month?
At like a presentation.
Go over the data, and that was in the spreadsheet that was emailed out?
Yeah.
Sure, I can explain that data.
Well, just publicly next month, so
Sure.
that we can, up on the screen, and I don't want to surprise anybody with it, but I think it would be great to be able to have some time set aside for that discussion if possible.
Okay.
We'll keep you right up the Airport Advisory Group report and referrals, and I apologize.
No, that's fine.
I think we skipped that last month, and that would have been my fault, Rachel, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. I know sometimes pending items drop off, and
No, I try to get the meeting over with that. And
I'll be
I
brief.
forgot it.
The only topic in front of the Airport Advisory Group, and thank you to those supervisors that came. As you know, it's a group of volunteers, and I think it was a very helpful discussion. We met for about an hour and a half. We did change the meeting date and time to allow for more discussion and not try to cram it in for personnel and finance. But overall, and Brian, please correct me if I'm wrong on anything here of what the overall sense was, One, if there are issues that the facilities committee would like technical advice or the airport advisory to take a look at things, please feel free to make whatever referrals over to that group you would like. They're anxious to be able to work on things that are relevant to our county and that we're thinking of at the time we're considering for a vote. Secondly, they discussed the proposed RFP process and what's going on. They would very much like to be, and Travis, you can correct me if I've forgotten anything, but they're very anxious to have an opportunity to look at that proposed draft. And as stated previously, this group would have an opportunity to look at it and provide feedback and any edits or concerns. The overwhelming feeling at the meeting the other day for the group was that they were concerned to see it chopped up, go out too much into piecemeal, and that worried many people that were at the meeting, and they had conveyed all of those concerns to Brian and asked Brian to take it back to the subcommittee that was working on developing the RFP. So that, I think, sums it up, but it was a really good meeting, and we would appreciate having that dialogue continued.
Good, thank you. Doug?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I'm very concerned that this process of putting out an RFP is going, in my opinion, too slow. I understand doing due diligence. I understand all that need, but in my opinion, this RFP process needs to be tightened up. It doesn't need to be complicated, yet we need to respect our rights as a county. And I think we need to make this a clean and neat document and get it out there as soon as possible, because I, for one, know when counties, when government runs certain things, we do a very poor job from an efficiency standpoint. And I firmly believe that once we put this RFP out there, if it's done correctly, we'll have an interested party or parties that will want to lease the airport. And I firmly believe that it will be, no doubt about it, in the best interest of Warren County to have a private party leasing this county airport. And the savings that this county will obtain, hopefully between $400,000 and $550,000 a year, will be so significant, everybody will be doing dancing in the streets of Glens Falls. So the sooner we get this done, and I'd like to know an update on where we are on this RFP process, how tight it is. I don't want it piecemealed. I think that's bad business to piecemeal things out, from my experience. I think it should be one document, and it should be tight, and it should be protecting our rights, but on the other hand, it shouldn't piecemeal it out to make it unacceptable to any parties that want to participate in the RFP process. So I guess I'm asking Dan, can we get an update on the RFP process?
And I would defer to the chairman, who's done a good job collecting the peoples to be together. Would you give an update on where we're at and how we're moving forward with the RFP process?
Brian?
And the only reason I point that out is the chairman's taking a very active role in getting the right people involved and make sure that we get all the right information.
Jeff, Ross, Wayne Lamone, Ed Bartholomew, you said at the first meeting, Chairman, you said it too. What I asked them to do is to pull together some important information which they can then bring to this committee for you to take a look at in an organized fashion, to break down all the operations at the airport so that the committee is very clear as to what the operations are, to also take a look at some of the financial considerations so the committee is totally aware of all the different financial considerations. And at that time, I think I wouldn't see any reason why, although it would require more meetings of the committee, Mr. Chairman, I think at that point in time, I think you're in a great position to basically step forward and finish up the RFP process. Give your instructions to staff as to exactly how you envision them proceeding, and I wouldn't expect at that point it would take very long at all. But I think it's very important that all the supervisors, but particularly the supervisors on facilities, but all the supervisors really have a much better understanding of all the different operations and all the different responsibilities at the airport, and including all some of the financial considerations at the airport. Up into and including those things that we are going to be responsible for as the owner, even at a certain point in time so that we're very clear in our minds exactly what our responsibility is going to be going forward. I believe we are pretty much there at this point. We have a meeting
Next week?
this afternoon.
We may have one this afternoon at
This afternoon, but after that, I wouldn't see any reason why they wouldn't, chairman wouldn't be in a position at that point to call a meeting and then begin to discuss these items. And actually, some of these items are of a contractual nature, they're of a strategic nature, whatever. Some of these discussions will have to take place, I believe, in an executive session. But at a certain point, once there's a draft document, naturally that would be then available for any public input or comment at that point in time. There would be a period of time there before we finally step out and go to bid. But anyway, that's basically articulates it here, what I've asked the staff to do. I'm not sure about this comment of segmentation, but the idea there would be to maintain as much flexibility within the bidding process as opposed to excluding one item or another. In other words, I'm not exactly sure where that came about, but I think I made it pretty clear to you, Jeff, that the idea within the process was to maintain as much flexibility as possible as opposed to doing something that is going to inhibit an interest in the property or foreclose something that we might do later on. So, rather than that, I think at this stage is assemble the information that needs to come before the committee, both in terms of the operations and in terms of finances, get it in front of you. And at that point in time, I think we're in a position to begin to pull some documents together from other RFPs, from other airports that you might be interested in taking a look at. Put it in a succinct form and get it in front of you. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Chairman.
This looks like it might be another couple of months before we really have an RFP out. Is there a time frame for Rich Skimhorn and the FBO, their contract? I mean, will we have to do an extension on that if they want one?
I don't believe that's a problem.
I think the current contract expires at the end of 2018.
Okay.
And so I think the last time we talked schedule in committee, the intent was to try and get an RFP out in September so that we had a thorough proposal period and review period after proposals are received. And I think that timeline works fine with making decisions well in advance of the expiration of the current contract.
Okay, we're going to open up the Rachel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We just got a few minutes left at 45, so I want to open it.
Quick. Jeff, does that apply, like last time when we did the renewal, it got caught off guard and we needed 6 months before? Does the same thing happen with this?
No, the last time the airport committee got moved into DPW when we were condensing committees, and that lasted for several years. The DPW committee meetings got extended so long they wanted to subdivide them again. They subdivided the airport out into facilities. So we got it in our lap with maybe 8 months, and this was a pending item, whatever it was, coming up. And you had a lot of inexperienced people that hadn't worked with this because it hadn't been in our committee structure. So, what we have put together, whatever, be it as it may, and the criticism of it was we didn't do a thorough job with it because we didn't address the time. And there was nothing derogatory towards Rich. He did everything he had said he would do, and then some. And we were very happy with the performance. And we had a 5-year renewal, and we felt that we should expedite and get it to where he could continue on doing what he was doing, and that's where it ended up. And then, of course, there was a lot of other things that came into play that some criticism was pointed at, and it would have been the fault of the committees for not being as astute or doing the diligence that it needed. Okay? I'd like to open up the floor to anyone that wants to speak. Rich?
Yeah, I'll just make it real quick because I know you're tight on time. I just wanted to give you an update. An email went out this morning from Ross, including most of the supervisors, about hangars 5 and 6. I am ready to start as soon as possible. I just think there's some confusion. This isn't criticism. But
but they asked for a building permit and plans. You don't get a building permit until I actually obtain a signed lease from the county for hangars 5 and 6. And then how it's been done in the past is Warren County Fire Prevention and Building Codes issues the building permit. The hangars are identical to the 4 that exist now. The only difference would be whatever the building codes were from the last one I built 5 years ago, like discussed today. There'll be maybe a new energy code or loading for the building. But typically, you don't put the cart before the horse. I need a signed lease for buildings 5 and 6, and then I can certainly present them with a copy of the building plans, but the approval of the building plans typically is the building department as far as that goes. So if I'm misunderstood, I'd just like to clarify it now, because time is, we're already into almost the end of June here, and I'd like to get in the ground soon if I could. And then I know there was a discussion when I provided the engineer plans, because of all the new stormwater regulations, which all of us are aware of them, I'm sure Jeff's very well aware of them, the stormwater requirements, it took up some additional land outside of the footprint that we proposed. So that does need to be discussed, but it doesn't matter if it's me or the county put a parking lot in. Stormwater regulations now eat up a lot of property, which has actually devalued people's properties today, just so we all understand. But I am I'm ready to start 5 and 6 as soon as possible. The other thing I just want to bring up, so there's no confusion, we called for locations for the office building for this week. Van Dusen and Steves is staking the building out this week. We have been in contact with Brian. I believe that he has everything he needs. I've had the building permit since October of 2015 for the office building. I've been paying the county for over 2 years on the lease for the office building. Ross Dewberry has had copies, and I have all the stamp plans here for this office building, just so there's no confusion when I get on, when we start next week. And I will notify Ross, hey, could you meet us out here? We'll do a little pre-construction meeting. But we are ready to go. As far as I know with the county, everything's been signed, sealed, delivered. The reason that it was delayed for 2 years from October, if we can all, I just want to give a quick summary. I got the building permit, and then as it's been done in the past for all the construction I've done at the airport over the years, the airport manager files for the proper permits from the FAA to be able to move forward. That's after we get our building permit. No big deal. It wasn't filed. We had to do it, and then it was 6 months waiting there. Finally, when we got the approvals for that, we got ready to start again. We went out there, and there was an electrical vault that was in the way. Ross, obviously says, what are you guys going to do about this? And we're like, geez, we didn't know about it, because we thought this was all predetermined beforehand. So Ross recommended CNS Engineering. It was $7,600 I had to pay to have them give an opinion of what to do. Their two suggestions were for $37,000 I could move the electrical vault because there was no plans, no information provided. The county had nothing to say where anything was, so they had to retrace, redo everything. The other option was to move the building back 12 feet to avoid the vault, which this board all agreed upon. So that's why there's been such a delay, because I've had this permit for almost 2 years. So I hope there's no further delays. I did have a tenant for this office building last year. It's nothing, I'm not upset over it. I'll get another tenant, but I am ready to go now with this. I hope that if there's any open questions, we can answer them right now, so I'm not delayed with this office building anymore.
Go ahead, Rob.
Rich, the two hangars, you need the lease. Do you assume that because of the wetland issue, that you have to lease the wetlands too?
No, there's no wetlands. What it is, right, you guys had already initially approved hangars 5 and 6 pending the engineered plans to come back. And when I came back and said, geez, I want to build 2 more, hangars 7 and 8. So we incorporated an engineered plan, so it's not piecemealed, because that's another thing with DEC and environmental groups. They don't want you to piecemeal if you know you're going to have more additions. So what happened is when Tom Nace, the engineer, and he's no different than any other engineer, the buildings are where we approved them, but the stormwater that runs off the roof and the parking lots, it's been modified where 5 years ago you only needed just a small area to retain stormwater. Now stormwater requirements have multiplied tenfold. So there's stormwater that showed up on the engineered plans that the county may say, geez, we want you to lease it, or we have to talk about it. But it's something that any of us would be required to do. We just didn't realize how much it would be, and that was a question that came up this morning. And I just don't want to delay the hangars anymore if we could get that out in the open.
Claudia?
I assume we did not sign the lease yet. So I guess I would say, can we amend it to include that land that he needs for the stormwater? Because I think it makes more sense to have that included in his lease.
Yeah, I was going to have Brian update us on where we're at with the
Hangers, the
discussion.
leases for 5 and 6 have the amendments, the leases for 5 and 6 have been signed. We had a public hearing late last year. They were approved. We were awaiting FAA review, I believe, and an environmental assessment. Those were done. Those leases were signed a couple of weeks ago, maybe. We have not done anything on 7 and 8 yet, because we're waiting for the Mr. Skemmerhorn's proposal where they're going to be. I know there were several options he was looking at, but then we can use the same format, amended, whatever way the committee and the board would like.
So what Rich is asking for signed leases for 5 and 6 or 7 or 8?
I believe 5 and 6, those are set.
Right, 5 and 6 you've already approved, and I'd like to get started on those as soon as possible, but a question arose this morning when they received the plans from my engineer where it showed some additional, we don't call them ponds, they're shallow retention areas for stormwater. So I think the question was, should I be paying more to retain that additional land that's required for stormwater?
Do you have an opinion on that, Brian?
At this point, I don't know exactly what is required, but we will work through that and we'll propose if there's an amendment necessary, we'll get that before the committee and the board as soon as possible.
I mean, even a workshop would be helpful.
And you're looking for this to be expedited naturally is your request?
Yes, because as it is right now, I can get delivery of the building in September. If I keep waiting, then I'm getting into winter, and these are big buildings.
Well, Rich, you don't have a problem with, you don't have a problem if some of the pond has to be included as an amendment in the lease, so that isn't going to delay.
Right. These are the areas right here, because of new stormwater, it's handling all the stormwater from these 4 buildings and all this parking surface, which, by the way, all this parking surface is being paid by Rich Skimmelhorn because I guess the grant could not be gotten from the FAA or the state. So this is the additional area that came up in this conversation this morning.
So can we approve the leases or whatever, and then have an amendment for because we're going to have to go out and survey how much land, right?
Probably, yes.
Yeah, the existing leases are a 5-foot buffer around the footprint of these buildings. These 2 right here, the smaller ones, are 5 and 6, and the existing lease premises is a 5-foot buffer around the footprint of the building. So there's the additional improvements that we're talking about here is the driveway access. Originally they had discussed using the existing culvert, a small culvert right here, but it looks like it's probably too tight. So there's an extension shown here to the existing culvert as well. I need to review that with the environmental assessment that was conducted. And then there's additional, all this right here is the stormwater management area that Mr. Skimmerhorn's been referring to, and additional parking spaces as well to serve the buildings that are outside the leased premises as well. So, and then there's a new access point over here that will connect out to Queensbury Avenue. That needs to be reviewed from an engineering perspective for, connecting to the highway to Queensbury Avenue. So these areas are all leasehold improvements that are not within the existing leased premises.
How do we get the job done? I mean, it sounds like these are...
Yeah, I'm happy to lease what's required, but keep in mind, this is a drainage swale. Nothing would really be built here anyways. But I just want to caution the board that if someone came along and wanted to build a small hangar or a small business, I just want to caution you that someone may not have the means to be able to pay for additional stormwater area that won't be used anyways. We're happy to have the engineer just say, this is what land, but again, then if I'm paying for it, you're locking yourself into where
another user may not be able to tie into this because it was designed for me, for these 4 hangars and this parking space. So it's a board's call whether they want to charge for this or not. But it would be a requirement, regardless if the county put a parking lot in, you would have to put some sort of stormwater in. And unfortunately, it's changed drastically over the last 4 or 5 years with stormwater.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of different ways to do the stormwater. In some communities, the developer builds the improvement and then dedicates it to the municipality. That's one way to proceed. Another way to proceed is, as Rich has identified, it's just stormwater, just basically for his project. It's sized singularly to his project. The parking areas, on the other hand, is this something new?
Yeah, and it was suggested to us, and I'm all for paying for that because obviously it's servicing those hangars.
So the question there would be, I assume these would be private lots that would service those buildings. They tie into a public lot, so I'm not sure what would be required contractually in that regard. There's going to have to be some type of right to cross that public lot to get to those private lots. Provided we don't have any issue with that, I don't see an issue. The other parking lot comes down to, would that be a gate into this area off of Main Road?
This right here, the fence line actually in the building become part of the secure perimeter, so there would hopefully be a gate, a sliding gate right here to get onto the ramp, but this is all land side. The fence is right here,
right.
So this would be land side, and then the building door itself would be the secure access point.
So how would you handle security off of that parking lot?
The tenant would be responsible for maintaining a secure access through the building, so otherwise it would be a security fence like we normally have.
I see.
And then the building itself, that door, is the access point that the tenant is responsible for controlling.
Is that typical?
Yes.
Yes, Ron, next to hangar number 3, I actually paid for the motorized gate, and more or less there's no agreement, but I gave it to the county, and now they have it with a,
I like the private parking. I think it takes the pressure off of what limited parking we have. The people that are in those buildings are going to closer to the buildings, so I think that's a big plus as well. I guess the question there would be that I suppose that would require some contracts as well.
We can include language to accommodate whatever method we agree on. We can certainly include language in the leases to accommodate that. Yeah.
Ryan,
The question you, Ross, would be in terms of a stormwater plan for the park is that this fits within that plan. In other words, that let's say in the future, for whatever reason, I don't even know if there's enough. Say we wanted to expand on the stormwater plan for some reason, we wanted to modify the stormwater plan for some reason, then it would seem to me we would approach it one way. If it was no, we really don't. This is singularly for these buildings, then we might approach it a little differently. And then the attorney, as the Scrivener, is going to approach it in that.
Yeah, I'm certainly no expert in stormwater management. Unfortunately, I'm sure as they move along in their design, they weren't aware of this at the time, but when we get into the federal environmental assessment that was done, had this been shown in that process, our consultant would have been able to evaluate that and offer us recommendations on stormwater management if it was necessary at the time. And at this point in time, I would just simply request maybe Soil and Water to take a quick look at it and just weigh in quickly. I think they're the county's asset to review that.
I'm good with that.
Ron?
Rich, you planned to 7 and 8. I mean, that's conceptually. So when you do 7 and 8, you're going to need
Right.
the capacity of that wetland.
Right. Unfortunately, yes, I have to build this design for stormwater to include 7 and 8 at the same time.
So, I mean, we're not talking about
Yep.
airport putting anything
Right.
in and around that.
Yep. Right. I mean, I could have come in here and just showed you a little design for 5 and 6, but then I'm not being honest, knowing that I have to come back for 7 and 8, and then DEC and the certain environmental groups don't appreciate when you know what your plan is and you piecemeal it. I think there's a term for it, actually.
I just think that with the parking area and the wetlands, if we survey that up and figure out how many square feet it is, or whatever it is, and put a number on it,
Yes.
and let you get going.
Yep. John?
I think Rich's point is that he's certainly happy to lease the extra parking, that would be private, but the stormwater basin could also be expanded in the future for other airport operations, so he could just build that, like Ron said, and it would be owned by the county, and then the county could add to that in the future and make it a bigger basin if it was needed for more stormwater. So he doesn't need to exclusively lease that, he just needs to build it. Yes.
Okay. And then, go ahead, Jeff.
I just think with the current layout of these hangars, you know, the chances that there's going to be any development in that quadrant of the airport property is almost designed out at this point. So there's very little space between hangars 7 and 8 and the roadway. So I don't anticipate any additional development in that area because of this hangar layout. And some of the recent additions could cause a problem with the FAA environmental approval that's already been obtained. So I think Ross has got to coordinate with the FAA to make sure that the changes don't require another review by FAA. That's for hangars 5 and 6, with the additional driveway and a new culvert going in that wetland ditch line. So the way it looks to me is at a minimum, we're looking at amending the existing lease for 5 and 6 to include those additional areas, and then modifying the current draft of the lease for 7 and 8 to include all of the facilities that support the construction of 7 and 8.
And I think what I'm hearing, though, we would be satisfied if the developer built the facilities and then we retained ownership of them in case there was more development. Isn't that?
Stormwater.
Yes, that's an option. Claudia?
Well, we're not giving up ownership, we're leasing him that, we're talking about leasing that stormwater. I think I would like to see him lease that because we're hearing that we won't be able to develop anything else in that particular area. And there is ongoing maintenance involved with those things, and if he's using it for his buildings, he should be maintaining it.
Okay. The issue that I don't have clarity with is this could possibly hold up the approval that you have for 5 and 6.
Yes.
Because you're adding, as you had discussed, with FAA. Ross, can you lend anything to the process of FAA getting that approval so that we can expedite, you could order the buildings? And I think the rest of the stuff is doable.
Tomorrow afternoon with Steve to go over some of these issues. I think hopefully I can get the FAA on the phone and find out if they need any additional submittals, or if this will be enough information for them to decide whether or not an amendment to the EA is necessary. I don't anticipate it to be a big issue. I really don't.
Okay. And Brian, I just want Brian to chime in because then we could move on. You don't as far as expediting, and Ross thinks that tomorrow you'd have a better feel for the retaining fields with FAA so it doesn't hold up the project. The rest of it that's local, how do you feel legally we can get through this?
Well, John and I have been able to communicate effectively to this point, and as long as I have direction from the committee on how you want me to handle it, John and I could certainly agree to language that we could put before the board.
What about approval 7 and 8 so Rich can purchase and have them here so he can do it by September, etc.? John?
Yeah, I'm in favor of doing what we have to do to move this along so Rich can put these hangars. What do we have to do?
5 and 6.
5 and 6 and...
We've approved 5 and 6, right? So as far as the county board, we have that approved. 7 and 8, you're looking?
And if there is any maintenance associated with the stormwater, like annual cleaning up debris or mowing, I think we could include that. I don't think anybody's going to be upset about that. So I'm in favor of just moving this thing along and getting it done. One last question, though. There are advantages to the 1,000-foot extended runway, though, aren't there?
Yeah, like I'm not going to say there isn't. There's a lot of advantages. I can tell you what they are if you want.
That's all I need to hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brian, the 7 and 8, you're looking for approval next month's meeting or do it now? What are you comfortable with as far as advising the committee? You might want to Jeff might want to chime in.
I think we need a proposal from Rich that shows where he wants, where he wants those buildings, the footprints of the buildings, and the attendant structures, the attendant area that he wants to lease or not lease, and then a decision from the committee on how much they want him to lease, whether it includes the stormwater, whether it includes the parking. I think this is the first I've seen this particular drawing, but if I get direction from the committee and we know what Rich wants to do, then John and I can incorporate that in an agreement that we can put before the board.
Okay, so if we have that by next meeting, those submissions of 7 and 8, the locations, et cetera?
Those are all... That is a submission. Everything's on there. We can get you, I mean, I guess John can do a detailed deed description and everything for it, and put the square footage and everything.
I was just going by what Brian just reiterated to expedite, and he was saying what his needs were. And this is the first you've seen them?
I've seen a lot of different things. If this is the final one that Rich Air wants to use, then John and I can come up with a proposed agreement. We can schedule the public hearing, and it can be on the board's agenda.
Okay, but that wouldn't be...
The airport, we just have to go through the same process we did with 5 and 6. We need to do the environmental assessment for 7 and 8, and the 7460, the airspace case review, and get it on the conditional airport layout plan approval by the FAA.
Will that be done by July's committee meeting?
The FAA? And then environmental assessment? No, certainly not. We need to enter into a contract with a consultant to do an environmental assessment, a short environmental assessment, just like they did on 5 and 6. 7 and 8 were not included in that environmental assessment, so they will need their own environmental assessment.
Okay, and the timetable for that. The committee needs to know this, because Rich is looking to...
Yeah, I think
So everybody's on the same page.
We're looking for help. So you tell me what I need to do to get 5 and 6. Should we cancel 7 and 8 and just leave it out, Ross? I mean, I need some help. We want to build. I think the community wants this. I think the board...
I think we're very close to reviewing the final plan. As soon as we have the final engineering plans for 5 and 6, we can get you a notice to proceed very quickly with the amendment for the parking areas.
But a 7460, you're saying for 7 and 8, we're talking, I mean, we waited over a year for the last one.
Approval process, yes. And we can use this document, this drawing, to get the consultant working on that document very quickly.
But he wants
reach out to them.
He wants to know 7 and 8 if that can be done so he can order and have them here no later than September for construction, etc.
5 and 6.
5 and 6?
Yes.
Okay,
you're be able to accomplish that without.
Okay, so 5 and 6 is accomplishable. 7 and 8, did you conjunctively want to do them as soon as possible?
Only because it's good planning if we're doing the site work on the stormwater for 5 and 6, and knowing that we want to add 2 additional hangars, 7 and 8, it made sense to do 1 submittal, 1 review. But it sounds like to me, from what we're being told now, it's going to be, I know it'll be another year before we're ready to do 7 and 8 the way things are going.
Okay.
So maybe, do we revisit Ross and just show you, I guess, just stormwater that will handle 5 and 6, and then come back?
No, this is good. This is what we want to see.
But this won't hinder 5 and 6?
This won't hinder 5 and 6.
Okay.
No. I don't expect it. I've got to consult with the FAA, but it should not hinder.
Okay.
And you'll know that within a week?
I will.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I hate to even ask a question. Man.
Go ahead.
The stormwater, though, that is proposed will handle all 4 hangars.
Yes.
Okay. I go back to my original. If he builds the stormwater, do we really need to lease the stormwater land from Skimmerhorn, or does the county just retain it and he does the maintenance on it? That's all I'm asking. I mean, if you want to lease rocks in those little ponds from somebody and make him pay for that may be open to other development in the future, and then we got to open up a can of worms and go back to him and beg.
I do want to bring to your attention, there is additional land that can be developed, and more hangars can be developed. So.
Yeah, just stay with me here. I'm just saying, do we want to just take, and and they'll be there and he'll maintain them and it's written into the lease? I'm okay with it, but if some of you feel that you want to get a pound of flesh and get that extra 50 cents per pound out of him, go ahead.
I'm okay if you put it into the lease that he's going to be responsible for annual maintenance or something like that.
Right.
Happy to.
Right.
And I think that all had to be ironed out legally, so that's why we're
Right.
It's something Brian would bring before us.
Yeah.
Because it's new. Matt, I'm sorry?
Is this something that's going to require a motion so we can expedite this without having to come back to committee next month? Maybe have this, we can iron out all these wrinkles by the board meeting per se, could we have that to expedite the process? Could we have it ready for that?
Brian?
Are you talking about?
I want to be sure that I understand what Mr. Schermerhorn's proposing and that what the committee's direction is. I believe that Rich is proposing that he is going to construct drainage facilities and parking facilities to accommodate 5, 6, 7, and 8. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as to the drainage facilities, Rich will not lease those. He will build them, and they will remain county property.
He will build and maintain
them, and they will remain county property. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what I'd like to see.
And as to the parking facilities, he will build those and lease them. Is that
Yes.
correct?
And, yes.
All right. John and I can agree on language to the appropriate documents that will accomplish that. To the extent they are leases of public land, they will have to have a public hearing and be before the board, and we will do that as well, as soon as possible.
That answer your question, Matt?
I just want to make sure that
We're over our time, so please be concise.
Can we have this done by the board meeting rather than the next committee meeting?
I will do everything I can. Yes.
Do we need a motion for that, or is that because there's always something in place already?
That's your pleasure. It can go on the agenda directly, or you can have a motion and it can come from here.
I'd like to make a motion reflecting those amendments, those adjustments.
Second by Ron, do you have clarity on the motion? You good with it?
It's clear as mud.
Work with Brian to make sure it's right.
Okay. On all those provisions that you just read. Okay, any more discussion on,
I just want to be clear on the motion. Does that also include permission for him to build 7 and 8? Initial preliminary approval
I
pending?
don't believe so.
No, it's just about 5, 6, the parking and the stormwater.
5 and 6.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We're running over the time limit.
Thank
Rich.
you.
Clock. Travis?
Travis can speak to him.
Travis Whitehead, Queensbury. I do realize that we're running out of time. I'll try to make this as quick as I can. One of the questions is time, and you can see how long it takes to get through seemingly simple things, signs, things like that. It's been 6 months. We have a lot of work to do on this contract. We don't have the time that we've been told. I mean, contract does end December of 2018. However, you have to there's a drop dead date 6 months before that, June of 2018, where you have to go ahead and say you're going to renew or you're not going to renew. And you're not going to, and that's really the end of it, because you're not going to be able to, if you don't have anything else in hand, you're going to have to renew. And that's exactly the problem we were in 5 years ago when we were trying to get a better deal on that 7.5 cents a gallon. And we're going to end up with 2 cycles of this if we're not careful. And that's my comment on that. My other comment has to do with CNS Engineers is your consultant. However, you are responsible still when you go ahead and send stuff to the FAA. That is your word. That is Warren County's word. That is CNS, maybe you put the words on the paper, but you are responsible. So when I look at Table 1.5, and you all have a copy of this, and the question was asked earlier about what that footnote 1 meant. Yeah, based, we have a Dassault Falcon 900 based, we have a Raytheon Hawker 800 based. However, this table is for critical design airplanes, okay? The critical design for this airport is B2. If you look at Dassault Falcon 900 and Raytheon Hawker 800, you will find that some models are B2 and some are C2. If you happen to look at the base planes, which are Dassault Falcon 900 Model EX, it is a C2. If you look at the Raytheon Hawker 800, it is a Model XP, C2. They are not the critical design. They do not belong on this sheet. The conclusions that are drawn from this and also on Table 1.6 need to be redone. I will be sending these comments to the FAA, but Ross has gone ahead and said he's going to clarify some of this stuff for you next time. I am asking, or maybe you should ask him to clarify whether or not the EX and the XP are C2 or B2. As quick as I can do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Travis. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure the committee's not confused on the current FBO contract. There is no provision for
Jeff, I'm
renewal.
sorry.
I'm sorry, Rachel can't hear you.
I just want to make sure the committee's clear on the current FBO contract, that there is no provision for renewal or extension. The contract expires in December 2018. The language that was in there regarding a 6-month decision point was for the anticipated second 5 years, but there is no provision in the contract for an additional 5 years or extension.
Okay. Anything else come before the committee? Rachel?
Just briefly, Ross, are you then going to clarify that regarding the C2 versus the B2 for us for next meeting?
Yes, I can do that.
Because I would like more info on that.
We're done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have anything come before the meeting, the committee meeting? Hearing none, motion to adjourn by Matt, seconded by John. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Oh, did he?